everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at chapter 23, which is the last chapter concerning the Second Punic War and Hannibal from book 3 of Eutropius' Breviarium. So you remember at this point in the war, the focus has completely shifted to North Africa. So we have Scipio's African campaign going on. We've talked about this in previous chapters. He's worked his way through the Carthaginian sort of heartland, attacking key allies and cities and kind of depriving them of resources as he goes. And one ally in particular that he, deprived Carthage of was Numidia. So when he takes out King Syphax and replaces him with Massinissa, you have this flip where now Carthage is really running out of allies in the area. And you have Scipio basically working unimpeded. There are Carthaginian armies, but no real generals of note. So it forced the Carthaginian Senate to call Hannibal back, right? That's the last move that they have. They need to get Hannibal back to North Africa. And it's setting up for this big conflict between the two men. So in previous videos, we talked about how the two men have met. Hannibal's spies have gone into Scipio's camp. They've seen what Scipio's army looks like. And, it's really about to collide because there can't be any sort of, peace talks. They tried that early on. The Carthaginians tried to delay to get Hannibal back. The Romans were really upset about this sort of fake peace treaty happening. And at the end of the day, they have to fight. And that's what we see in chapter 23. There's no more peace negotiations, sort of no more talking. They just have to fight it out. You have Hannibal in Africa, you have Scipio in Africa, and the winner is going to decide the outcome of the war. So that's where we start with chapter 23. And you have interea proelium ab utroque duce instructum est, quale vix ulla memoria fuit, cum peritissimi viri copia suas ad bellum educerent. So you have, meanwhile, interea, right? A battle, and it's really sort of a battle line, but proelium does mean battle, but it means they're organizing their army, right? A battle, instructum est, it was drawn up by each leader. So you have the passive voice verb, instructum, and you have the ablative of agent, right? Ab utroque duce, right? By each leader, they're drawing up sort of their battle line is kind of the idea, right? They're planning for the big battle. And you have, while scarcely, right, quale vix, scarcely in any memory, right, ulla memoria, there was sort of such a battle is really what it's getting at, right? It's something that Eutropius is saying that we've never really heard of or seen before in any memory, barely such a battle, right? And he has this causal clause here, the cum clause, right? You have cum peritissimi, since the most skilled, they're very skilled men, the peritissimi viri, they educerent, they were leading out. There's your imperfect subjunctive, right? They were leading out their own troops, copia suas, to war. So Eutropius is trying to say that while they're, meanwhile, right, they're setting up their battle line, and this battle was something that had never really been seen before in any memory, right, because of how famous the generals were. You have Scipio, who's very, very famous at this point, and has in his own right become a very skilled general. And of course, you have Hannibal, who has, for years been terrorizing the Romans and winning victories. Now they're drawing up their battle lines and they're going to fight. And the battle that's being referenced here is the Battle of Zama, which is 202 BCE. And this is the famous battle where the two armies are going to square off. Hannibal is going to bring his elephants. The Romans and Scipio have a plan for that. And you're going to see that the real swinging point, I would say, of the battle is that the Romans have really good cavalry, right, from the Numidians and Massinissa that plays a really large role. But you can look up the Battle of Zama. I would say that for all the interesting battles we've seen in this narrative and in the Second Punic War, the Battle of Zama is actually kind of a straightforward one, right? Just kind of line your armies up and fight. But it's worth looking into for sure because it's so famous. So I'd encourage you to, take a minute on your own and look up, however you can, the Battle of Zama and just try to learn a lot about it, right? Because it is a really, really famous battle that Eutropius is only kind of mentioning in a few lines here. Then you have Scipio Victor recadet, paene ipso Hannibale capto, qui primum cum multis equitibus dende cum viginti postremo cum quatuor evasit. So Scipio, the victor, right, recadet, he came back. You can say he came back a victor is kind of one idea. So Scipio wins, right? And you have paine, which means almost. So almost with Hannibal himself having been captured. There's your ablative absolute. So he almost got Hannibal himself. And it's Hannibal who, we have the relative pronoun there. So who at first, right, with many cavalry, cum multis equitibus, right? So first with many cavalry, then with 20, and last or finally postremo with 4 Awasit escaped. So it's showing how, Hannibal ran away, and the people that he's with, they're starting to fade off and get killed. So he's barely escaping with his life is the idea. Then we continue on, and you have Inventa incastris Hannibalis argenti pondo viginti milia auri octoginta cetera superlectilis copiosa. So again, you'll notice here that the battle was really just one line, right? Eutropius doesn't actually mention a lot about it. But now we're in the aftermath, right, of what happened after Hannibal fled and Scipio won. So again, I'd encourage you to read all about it on your own. But you have Inventa, which is really Inventa sunt, right? Something was found in the camp of Hannibal in Casus Hannibalis, right? What was found there? Viginti pondo milia, 20,000 viginti milia pounds of silver. Right, so a lot of sort of loot was in Hannibal's camp. Probably silver he was planning to pay his soldiers with, but either way, he finds sort of a treasury there, which is a big win for the Romans. And not only that, but you have octoginta, so 80 of gold. So it's not just silver that Hannibal was walking around with, but they find a lot of gold as well. And so that's interesting because this probably is all the war loot that Hannibal had accumulated in his time in Italy. So it's sort of like the Romans getting their stuff back in one sense, but he has a lot of money with him, right? Then you have cetera copiosa, so other goods is kind of what superlectilis is doing here. So other sort of abundance, copiosa of goods. So meaning there's a lot of other stuff there as well that they find in the camp. So it's not just money. They're finding, things like furniture, stuff, money, probably, clothing, I don't know, whatever it is that they decide to find that, that is being characterized by Eutropius as superlectilis, right? So they find a bunch of stuff is the idea, and they take it back, right? They loot Hannibal's camp. But it tells you just how close Hannibal was to getting killed. He flees his camp and leaves everything behind, right? If you're running for your life, you're not going to go back to take anything. So the Romans find the camp. Then you have post id certamen pax cum Carthaginiensibus facta est. So after this certamen, this struggle or contest, you might say, meaning the battle, finally you have pax, peace, facta est, was made cum Carthaginiensibus, with the Carthaginians, right? So after the battle, there's really nothing left, right? Hannibal is gone. His army's destroyed. There's nothing stopping the Romans from taking Carthage and forcing them to a peace treaty, which is the whole idea, right? Hannibal was the last sort of hope that the Carthaginians had. And now they're going to inflict very heavy war reparations. We've seen that in the last couple chapters. Scipio offering, you can keep 30 ships, but you're going to give us all this money. Now there's no card for the Carthaginians to play anymore, and they are going to suffer pretty heavy damages or war reparations, you might say, for the Punic War, right? The Romans are going to make them pay. But they finally get peace, but it's on Roman terms, I guess is what I'm getting at, okay? And you end the chapter and sort of the account with Scipio Romam redit in genti gloria triumphavit, atque Africanus ex eo appellare coiptus est, okay? So you have Scipio redit, he returned to Rome, right? There's your accusative. So he returned to Rome. And with huge glory, in genti gloria, triumphavit means he celebrated a triumph. It kind of looks like it means he triumphed, but it means he got a triumph is the idea, which is a very specific honor and sort of military celebration and parade through the streets. So he got one, of course, for all his great deeds, and he celebrated it with, a huge amount of glory, right? Because he had just ended the Punic War, Second Punic War. And you have coiptus est, he began appellare, to be called, right? So he's not calling himself this. You have the passive infinitive. He's being called because of this, or from this, ex eo, meaning from, his great victory, he begins to be called Africanus. This is where he gets his nickname of Scipio Africanus, because he conquers Africa, right? That's the whole idea. So now he starts to get that nickname, and he is one of the most, if not the most famous Romans of the time, and particularly in his own time, right at this moment, he is the most famous Roman that they have, right? So he's achieved sort of this ultimate glory. Then you have finem accepit secundum punicum bellum post annum nonum decimum quam coipera, okay? So now you have the Second Punic War, the Secundum Punicum Bellum. It sort of received an end, right? Or it accepted an end. It came to an end is kind of one way of saying it. After the annum nonum decimum, after the 19th year, literally the 9th and 10th year, quam coiperat, which it had began, or that it had began. So the 19 is kind of interesting. If you do the math, he's probably, Eutropius is probably starting his account of starting the Punic War at the siege of Saguntum, which is kind of where we started this whole thing. So if you count backwards, that would kind of be where he's getting this 19th year from. But it's a very long war, very destructive war. And you see the reason the Second Punic War and this account of Eutropius is interesting to read is all the different details, the characters, the stories, the battles, the history, the sort of politics involved. It's a really, really fascinating moment in Roman history, and it really changes the shape of the future, rather, for the Romans, right? They have a huge influx of slaves. They control the Mediterranean. The money is going to go through the roof, right? Their military is going to grow. The areas that they control are going to grow. And you're going to see from this a lot of unrest coming, right? A lot of civil unrest as sort of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So there's a lot of different details that we've seen. It was kind of referenced by Eutropius, actually a couple chapters ago. He's talking about Fabius and selling people into slavery. There's all these great details that you can approach the story from. So hopefully you've enjoyed this account, book 3 of Eutropius. It's a really good sort of starting place if you have maybe 3 or 4 years of Latin under your belt, somewhere in that range, depending on what you do. But getting more into the advanced stage, Eutropius is a really good way to start reading original Latin before you dive into things like, maybe you're reading Caesar or Virgil or whatever it is you go to read. Eutropius is kind of an easier way way into it. So hopefully this all made sense to you, and this particular chapter made sense to you. If you have any questions about this chapter 23, feel free to put them in the comments below. But otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed it and you've learned something as you've gone through this series, and that you keep reading and keep working at it, right? So feel free to go back and test your Latin, reread it, look up all the details we spoke about. There's a lot to approach here. And again, Eutropius is doing the brief account of this war. So he's not giving you all the details, and that's where it's kind of fun. You can look it up. You can look at other historians like Livy to fill in the gaps. But hopefully you've enjoyed it, and it's given you some confidence that you can read original Latin and Latin history without being overwhelmed. Keep at it. Like I always tell, if you need anything, let me know. But otherwise, good luck.